Focus On panel, where the idea is to bring along an assembled brain trust and talk about a particular topic that hopefully is relevant to any of our viewers or listeners. So if you do tune into this, if you are tuning into this, be it live or on a replay, then feel free to put any questions on the platform you're on, because we should be able to bring those up and actually address them live or on a replay, as you said. So before we crack on with our topic today, I'll just go around the room and let people introduce themselves and let you know who they are and what they do and why they're so lovely. So, Chris, do you want to say who you are and what you do?
I think probably most people, if they've watched this, will know me by now. I'm Chris. I'm one of the directors here at DataSense. We provide, well, specialists in data protection. We do this through managed IT, cybersecurity, and GDPR and data protection policies and procedures.
Thank you very much. And Barrett?
Barrett Panchel from C4 Secure. Mission in life is to help people ditch the password as a means of authenticating into their data. There are various means of doing that, but I think the whole gambit of getting rid of the password is the main attraction and the service that we're involved with.
Okay, thank you very much. And last but not least, Mr. Mather.
Good morning, everybody. Stephen Mather, solicitor, small and medium-sized businesses with a vast range of to help them all sleep better at night, data protection.
Okay, excellent. So the basic conversation today is about the implication of a data breach. So I guess my feeling is that some small business particularly think, it's not relevant to them, it's not going to happen to them. These hackers or cyber criminals out there only target the big boys. So I thought we'd just explore that and really just get your thoughts on, first of all, what sort of things can cause a data breach? How does it come about? What are some of the implications of that if people haven't got the necessary protection or policies in place? And also, what are some of the things that they can do to sort of limit the possibility of this happening to them, be they a small business or a large business or whatever? So if I come to you first, Chris, what are some of the things that actually cause a data breach? What are some of the things that people do that actually allow people access to their IT and software?
Well, to be honest, you touched on it with what you just said, in that most small businesses, and to be fair, some medium-sized businesses, just think it will never happen to them because they're too small, they're not important enough. So why worry about it? But I was just having this conversation with Gal, my business partner, about this a couple of minutes ago. She's doing some training this afternoon. Most of it comes through companies not training their staff, not making them cyber aware, and then things like malware, ransomware, as simple as clicking a link. They click the wrong link, put the wrong details in, or download a bit of software in the background without realizing it, and bang, suddenly they've got an infected machine, infected network, and from there on out, I mean, there's other aspects to that, but probably a good 80 to 90% of stuff is just users not being cyber aware.
Yeah, and Barrett, in terms of the customers you work with, what are your feelings about how cyber aware they are and whether they've got the right things in place to protect themselves?
I personally think there's a misnomer about what people consider to be cyber awareness in their roles, because they think they're protected. They think that having a secure password or a strong password policy, for example, is a great deterrent. But it's like putting a dummy alarm box outside of your house. Some of these determined fellows that want to get in are pretty wise to that kind of thing anyway. I think a lot of the clients we deal with are very much still burying their heads in the sand, considering that they should know about the implications of GDPR compliance and the demonstration that they are cyber aware, or at least taking lots of measures to protect themselves. They still are a long way from the being in an acceptable position.
And Stephen, in your world, with your clients, are they cyber savvy or technical savvy when it comes to the potential of a data breach, in your opinion?
without casting a spell, I would say no. The people that I deal with put in place everything that they need to put in place. I've spotted is that 2000 and when GDPR as a thing, everyone was like, "Oh, we've got to do GDPR stuff." And Gates basically downloaded some sort from the internet and gone, "Yeah, I'm sorted. I am compliant. Come to me." And sometimes I have clients come to me and go, "Oh, Stephen, can we do it?" And I would go, "Yeah, where's he?" "Well, we don't have." "Well, no, but that," and I think that sort of was evidence of the fact that people know what they need to do, and it is something that is thing. And more recently than I've been selling, when you're selling businesses, you have to go through a process. And one of the questions that a savvy buyer is ask about your data protection stuff. And most of the time, talking about turnovers of to maybe 10 million quid here. Yeah, we've got a data protection policy. Think else. Like you need a lot more. You need to have done a full audit. You need to have this and that. And they go, "Oh."
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. You know, ticking the GDPR box and having the policies in place is one thing, but if your staff aren't trained, which Chris touched on, then there is no point if you're not sort of permeating the training and the knowledge and the wherewithal within your team to make sure that they're not doing the wrong thing and causing a potential ransomware and stuff to get in. What very kind comment from James.
What I found amazing, absolutely true from James, in preparing for this just now, and I've just shown on LinkedIn at least, is the government's own cybersecurity breaches service, and it says that 39% had identified a cyber attack, 40% of businesses, and that's consistent. It's 40% of had an attack, cyber attacks in the last 12 months, in small world, 4,200, and that rises to 19,400 for pure cost. And so from a business, even the likelihood as a betting that you having to pay out $4,500 says to me that this is definitely something, stuff in place.
And the other thing is that what people don't realise is that once they've been hit once, that isn't the end of it. Because being hit once means that these guys know how to get in, and they'll keep repeating it. And the statistics show that anybody that's been hit once will be hit 2 or 3 times, following on from that point. And so the whole point about being cyber secure or cyber aware is not about, like we say, about having these policies written up and putting them on a shelf. It's about demonstrating, and Chris will bear me out that, GDPR is the be all end all because it's law. However, the demonstration of that is via things like being, Cyber Essentials accredited, for example, which goes a long way towards demonstrating that you are actually taking cybersecurity seriously. And that's where, in my opinion, a lot of people fail because they get this misnomer again, about I've got all the protection I need in place. But it isn't just about having one solution to protect yourself. It's about tailoring that solution to each individual group or user that is going to have access to your data.
Yeah. So Chris, you've been involved, I believe, in Cyber Essentials. Do you want to say a little bit about what that is and why sort of businesses should consider going through that process?
Yeah, we've done a couple of audits now for various companies. I'll give you a good example, a bad example of one industry, being accountants. I won't pick on the solicitor in the room because I'll get a cease and desist email before I finish the sentence. We've audited 2 accountants. One had actually had a recent cyber attack, which was a staff member clicking a link, putting in their username and password, and then giving them access to their 365 email account, OneDrive, and SharePoint. We did another, and actually we failed them after this on their Cyber Essentials because they won't become compliant because they won't address a couple of key issues. Whereas another accountancy practice we've looked at couldn't do enough to become Cyber Essentials accredited. And that's just now currently with IASME to be reviewed, make sure the way I've answered the questions is good enough. And then they'll get their accreditation hopefully in the next week or 2.
And this is a government standard, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it's a government standard. It tests, I can't remember the 5 key bits. There's different levels to Cyber Essentials. You've got Cyber Essentials, which is the basic, Cyber Essentials with governance, which is the basic plus policy and procedures in place, and then Cyber Essentials Plus, which is literally like the whole hog, and doing the penetration tests. If Laura's watching, stop giggling. That will then show that what you've said in the basics is actually implemented. Mm-hmm. And it seems like having user controls, making sure those really annoying Windows updates go through, software's updated, you don't run anything that's out of date, you have 2-factor authentication on, you have hardware and software in place to mitigate anything getting into your systems. It's all very key basic stuff.
Yeah, and can businesses do that themselves, or do they need somebody like you to sort of hold their hand through it?
Depends how tech-savvy they are.
Okay.
The basic cost, if I remember the prices and they haven't changed, to do the basic is £300 plus the VAT. You download the form from IASME's website, fill it in, submit it to IASME, and then they'll come back and say, yes, you've passed, or no, you failed. If they're not tech-savvy, then absolutely get someone in, whether it's me. I know Barrett's guys offer it as well. But get a professional in just to make sure what you're saying is correct. And it's even worse if you do it yourself, just get someone like us to review it for a small fee. We'll review it and say, no, you need to adjust these.
Yeah.
Or it's not quite there.
I think what Chris is saying is absolutely right. But I think that in all cases, if you are serious about being protective of your information and demonstrating and showing to the outside world that you are actually taking your data and their data and protecting it seriously, then really you should be employing or deploying the services of people like myself, Chris, etc. Because we know the language that IASME want their applications to be put forward in. It's no good, putting your application in and then hoping for the best, because there's always all misinterpretation. I'm sure Stephen will know that there is a language that is acceptable in certain formats that will get you straight through. But if you try and do it yourself and you bodge it up, then you're going to be quickly caught out, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. So James has asked a question, which sort of leads into the next question of mine. What does the panel think of the off-the-shelf security products like Norton, McAfee, others are available?
Well, in the option of those 2, James, wash your mouth out with soap. Those 2 I would never ever touch. I actually find them more of a drain on the system and its resources than actually having the virus would be. I'm a big fan of ESET Internet Security, but you've got products out there like SentinelOne is a really good product, and we can advise you and help you with that if you want to look at it. Off the shelf, in some regards, is the only option. Unless you're going to sit there, write your own antivirus or internet security software, do all the updates every time a new 0-day comes about or a new virus is known. Off the shelf is the only answer, but it's finding the right one. That likes of Norton McAfee, no, I would never touch. I would never advise customers to look at. But there is a plethora of options out there, and again, we can advise on that.
And does software like that actually have an impact? Is it going to identify things that are likely to cause a data breach if they sort of like get onto the systems of a business?
if it's configured properly, yes. There's no point just installing it and then not realizing that your firewall's turned off because you've just left a whopping great hole in your system there. So you've got to install it and make sure it's done properly. Is it going to be 100%? No, because nothing in cybersecurity ever is. It's part of a bigger picture. But yeah, it's better than nothing. And this is where Windows actually comes out quite highly, is that Windows does have built in a very basic internet security software. Apple's playing catch up. They've yet to implement that themselves. So if you're careful, really careful, you know what you're doing, you could just about get away with the basic Windows one. But even I have ESET on this machine because I'd rather pay for that little bit of extra protection than chance that the Windows one hasn't yet been updated to the latest database of viruses and malware.
Yeah, Stephen, over to you. What are the sort of like legal implications if a company, has a data breach? What legally do they have to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, I work out what a data breach is. It kind of sounds a little bit trite, a bit obvious. Like if you've got somebody that's sort of encrypted some files or something along those lines, things amount to a data breach. A data breach can be loss of data, someone stolen, data, customer data, anything that can a human being. But it can also, in relation to damage, the files that get encrypted, that's technically it's a data breach because that's them can with a key, and so that would be counted as a data breach. So you first of all got to there's a tool on the ICO website that are not you need to report, and what the legislation says is that you have to report of it happening. So you have to report it to in the UK Commissioner's Office. Hopefully everybody registered as a data controller, but there is a data controller with them. But then it needs to be a registration, and if there's a data breach, then you report it to the ICO, anyone that's affected. So within 72 hours, you've got to have identified, reported it to the government body and affected on it. So notification obligation pretty severe. And then once you've notified, that's when it really starts to escalate, because the IC investigator look at it and go, what's going on here? Doing this, there's been some very big high profile over the last couple of years, instance, hundreds of millions of pounds. So the ICO can fine people, if they're in their data security, haven't done what they ought to have done. And we're looking at, kind of type figures for fines. So there's that potential. And then wasn't bad enough. The thing where to the forefront for a lot of businesses, claims from individuals, and there's a number of laws that are actioning data breach claims, involved in a data breach, saying, you want some compensation for that data breach. There was one energy company, and they went bust. People's Energy, sizable data breach. I was one of them, so I was bringing a little data breach claim, and then they went bust claims, and not enough money. Which leaves people high and dry. That would be really difficult, because again, if it's of a significant size, significant impact, there's going to be some to the individuals. Not talking about it. There's no sort of fixed scale at this point. talking about a few thousand quid for a data breach. The stress and anxiety, it depends on the circumstance. For a celebrity or a minor celebrity, at least celebrity, let's call them that, and their home address was out in the public, and some real serious concern because people could go where they live. So for that person, it was quite slightly higher because of the stress for the average Joe having your name and address. Is anyone really bothered? Bob, you're going to do something about it. And if digital problems by taking out credit and those kind of things, then yeah. So from a business point of view and legal point of view, there's getting all of this right.
Yeah, so it certainly sounds like it's not taking the risk. So anyway, Barrett, it's not all that bad if you get a data breach. Is it surely just roll back to your latest backup date and everything's fine?
Well, yes and no, because you got to equate it to the cost element in terms of cost to business, because we talk about simple things like IT departments, their big drain on their resources is the number of users who come back and say, listen, I've forgotten my password, can you reset my password? Now that equates to somewhere over 51% of the IT department's time. Now, if you equate that to monetary values across the board in business, that could be, quite a lot of money. So I don't think it's the mechanical aspect that is the damage. It's the cost aspect that is what we should be looking at. And certainly, it invisibly hits the company's bottom line. Definitely.
Yeah, I think you've told some horror stories, Chris, when you've talked about this topic in terms of the consequences that it can have on business, and sometimes it's not that easy just to roll back to your latest data backup, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, in terms of the impact, Barrett's right. You've got the staff cost, the downtime to your business, and just rolling back to an update from yesterday. That's 24 hours, or rolling back to your last backup. So if that's an hour ago, then you've lost an hour per member of staff for what's going to be a couple of working days, effectively. If you're rolling back 24 hours, that's depending on the number of staff, 24 hours worth of staff work having to be redone, plus the work they would normally do on that next working day. If you've had a breach big enough that it's reported and gets into the press, you've got the reputational damage. Mm-hmm. It does go on and on. And then if you investigate by the ICO, the fines on the back of that, the time you've got to spend with the ICO to show them what you've done or what's happened, what you've done to mitigate it going forward. It can really take a business under. One data breach that's significant size will take a business under. And the sad thing is, most data breaches aren't reported. I know Stephen rattled off some stats earlier. That is just going to be what's being reported. Mm-hmm. That won't be anywhere close to the number of data breaches that have happened and people brush under the carpet because they don't want to go through the rigmarole of the ISO investigation, the potential loss of reputation.
Yeah. In your experience, are there any sort of like typical mistakes that small businesses make that have let these hackers into their systems?
Well, given that about 80% come from staff, the easiest route in is the weakest link, and it's 8 out of 10 times it's a staff member. Training, just not taking it serious enough to even train your staff. There's plenty of free courses out there. Obviously, Data Sense does cyber training. We've got an event next week. Just get that plug in there quickly. But I would highly recommend for every staff member you have, 2 hours of their time across 2 1-hour sessions. Cyber Griffin, it's the Square Mile City of London's police force. That's their cyber team. They run online sessions, free to attend. It's a 1-hour session. You'll cover the very basics. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to delve into the kind of stuff we do. But as a starting point, it's well worth it. And it's 2 1-hour sessions for free. Why wouldn't you take it up? So that's, something to have a look at. Just go and Google Cyber Griffin. I'm sure, Paul, you'll drop it into the little scrolly thing at the bottom in a few seconds.
I'll try and multitask. It's not my best quality, but I'll give it a go.
One of the Sorry, Chris. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, in Northamptonshire, I can never get this right. It's the Office of the Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner, run on a monthly basis for about 90 minutes on I think it's this Friday, the third Friday of the month, I think it is, a cyber forum. It does get attended by a lot of geeky people like myself. It's not aimed at us, but that seems to be the people who attend because we take it seriously. We can pass it down to our clients. But that's a free resource open to every business owner or every individual in the town. Well worth getting along to just to find out what the latest trends are, what's been spotted, and find some really good contacts to start mitigating this type of stuff.
Yeah, Barrett, you were going to say something.
Yeah. I was going to say that going along what Chris is saying, you have all of these available resources that you can tap into, but if the governance and life cycle of the business isn't attuned to being, if the attitude isn't towards being cyber secure, then no amount of free resource is going to help them, because ultimately it's not going to filter from the top down into your employees. Employees are notorious for finding the easy way around their workload. They'll find, if you put a little obstacle in the way, they'll find a way of getting around it. So because they want to do their job as quickly and as fluently. The job that the IT guys have is to balance that convenience with security. But if the attitude, if the appetite for being cyber aware or protecting yourself from any data breaches isn't there, therein lies another problem that will just basically, doesn't matter what product you put in, how much money you throw at it, it isn't going to sort the problem out. So it is a buy-in. It's a buy-in that is needed, all the way through the organization.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, people are one click away from a data breach, aren't they, at the end of the day?
Well, this follow on from what Barrett just said, the accountants I referenced earlier who had the data breach, the partners didn't want to put two-factor authentication on because it added that extra 5 seconds to log in into a 365 account. Had they done that, it would have greatly reduced the chance of this happening. It doesn't 100% stop it, again, because nothing in terms of cybersecurity is 100%, but it would have lessened that impact and probably, in this case, would have prevented it. There are ways around two-factor authentication I could go into, but I'll save it for another time or have a chat with me outside of this and I'll explain the process. But if the partners are brought in, that accounting practice would have likely not had the breach it had, and then the ICO investigation and everything else.
Stephen, I'm not sure whether you know the answer to this question. We'll soon find out, won't we? So, do you think that sort of phishing emails and other tactics that these people are using, do you think they're getting more sophisticated in your experience?
I don't know. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I sent it over to my parents. It seems a new trend at the moment of a message saying, "Hi, mum. Hi, dad. Here's my new number. Can you send me a message on what?" And say, "Oh, I need some money for this, that." And we've all kind of had those the COVID testing results not being delivered and that kind of thing. They just come in. And everything looks, doesn't it? And it's very easy when you're busy. And this is in the legal industry. They're targeted, particularly targeted on a Friday for completions and people moving house. And there was like law firms by people that have got out and all of a sudden say, "Hey, look, can you change?" And without really kind of checking, the law firm sending some scammers some property, or they their senior partner saying, "We urgently need you to make this. Can you do this straight away?" And there's definitely some sophistication, indeed some, sort of more is it looks always surprised me actually was happening. So we the banks generally use secure encrypted email for sending. What that tends to mean, because you don't use thing, so you get it on Outlook. There's open this attachment, ZHTML attachment, and they look gammy as anything, and then you like that is usually not hosted by these two banks that use that system, and then account or insert your password and that kind of thing. Well, every single time, and we because the scam emails would look exactly the same as the bank's emails, with the exact same login, but obviously a different. And every single time we managed to train all of our staff. We need someone to have a look at this before we click it, before we. And 99% of the time they were on the bank. It's a frustration. And haven't found a better system that looks more real from the bank than like they're ahead of the game. It seems to me.
Yeah, I think you touched on there. We live in a busy world, don't we? So you're clicking through your emails, and if it just happens to sort of say something about a delivery, and you happen to know you're expecting a delivery, it says click here, and all of a sudden, you're giving away some detail or other that these phishing emails are sent for. There's a couple of times where I've almost clicked on something because you check the email address. Sometimes that looks a bit dodgy because it's not from PayPal or whatever. Then you hover over the link and you see it's going to some obscure address. Obviously, there's some obvious ones there, but I think sometimes in the heat of the moment, you just think, oh yeah, I am waiting that payment, or there is something I'm expecting, and before you know it, as soon as you click that mouse, you're in the danger zone already, aren't you? I guess there's still other stuff you need to do, but you never know by just clicking on that, what it's actually loading in the background or what sort of stuff it's putting on your computer, and then that's it. It's too late then, isn't it? The damage is done, and as you all touched on, it's hard to redeem yourself back from that in certain instances, and it can cost you money, I guess, if those people are asking you for payment to release your data. And then there's also the subsequent thing which you've touched on in terms of the implications and actions you need to take in order to inform your customers and inform those people that are affected by it, and that obviously can harm your brand or harm your people's perception of how safe their data is with you. So just to sort of wrap this up then, are there any other final sort of tips or advice that you can give to anybody out there? I think the essence of this is don't ignore it. Don't wait for the solids to hit the air conditioning. There are things that you can do. That free training, Chris, was really useful. If people do nothing else, then put yourself and your staff on that, just so you've got the basics and people are armed with some more awareness than maybe before they did the training. So is there anything else that you would give as a top tip if we just go around the room in reverse order? We'll do Stephen first this time.
My tip is this, that it isn't all as bad as, and it's not all doom and gloom. It's not, and I've come across a few people, in particular generation, they go, oh, I don't want to touch it then. Rather not be involved. And I go, well, actually, no, thing is all, or can be all much more ways. You just need to do it all secure. And we do that by getting the right software, getting the right training in. I think for me, it's not a matter of hearing all of this doom and gloom, and where this is too difficult to comply with, and it's something that actually is, I want to say, relatively simple. That's probably it is straightforward enough to be able to get somebody on board. It's the right systems to give you as good as protect we have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Barrett, any last tip or advice from you?
Yeah, I think that predominantly, we've got to understand that the password approach is not now the best approach. Uh, it's there's an adage about test everything, trust nothing, and basically there are systems out there. We are involved with RSA Secure ID, which is the ability to use different types of authentication, because believe it or not, it's all about the identity. Is it who it who you want to access your information, and is that person actually that person? And to measure that risk is difficult but achievable. As Stephen says, it is relatively simple, but you've got to have the appetite and you've got to have the attitude to do it. And once you get that mindset, I think that it flows, and you're in a more safer situation, because much as we want to try and be clever about keeping the bad guys out, the bad guys are much more clever than we give them credit for, and they'll find a way through. So putting that burglar alarm box outside your house will at least deter the opportunist.
Yeah. And it is an ever-changing goalpost, I guess. As the software that's meant to protect us gets more sophisticated, so will they, I guess, at the end of the day. Chris, any last point from you?
Yeah, I'll run with 2 points. Partly Neil's put into chat on, I think, LinkedIn, about partnering with a professional IT support company. That's exactly what he's put. Thanks for that, Paul. Absolutely. I mean, I'm always happy to meet up with people, have a chat over a cup of tea or coffee, and discuss their IT side of things, either support or the cybersecurity. So, yeah, Neil's advice really good there. Partner up with someone you know and trust. And I'll leave you 3 little bits. Well, 1 little bit, but I'd have absolutely plagiarized this from Cyber Griffin. So you will hear this again if you do the training. If you don't, this is really, really good advice. Cyber Griffin called it the ABC of cybersecurity. Accept nothing, believe no one, confirm everything. Kind of what Barrett just said. Don't accept it because you get an email through that it's come from that person. Don't believe you've had a phone call through saying, "Hi, I'm the bank. I need to confirm some details with you." And if you're not sure on anything, confirm it. Either speak to a professional like myself. I've got clients who will email me copies of emails going, "Is this genuine?" And I'll just look at it and go, "Yes" or "No," and then delete it if it's not. And if you're not sure, if the bank calling you, say, "Thanks for your call. Can I call you back in 5 minutes?" Go to the website. Don't Google it. Type in the website and phone the number that's on there. It will save so much hassle.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, gents, thanks for your
thing. Oh, sorry, Paul. I know, but on that, the banking thing, it always used to really frustrate me. So it was Yorkshire Bank. Yorkshire Bank would confirm a payment being made, and it would come from, I'd be like, "Well, how do I know it's genuine?" Because we'll all know number. They said, "Can I call you back?" No, sorry. External calls in this. It's like, well, surely as a bank, you've got to try and help deal with this. And most banks, someone turning around and saying, actually, can I call my card or on the internet website or whatever? But there's some banks that really just don't help themselves either.
Yeah, I'll back up Steve on that. I used to, in my previous company, be with Yorkshire Bank for about 2 years because my business partner at the time wanted to use them, and they were awful for every reason you said there. So the minute we had to change the business, I ditched the bank and went to somewhere far more secure and user-friendly.
Okay, well, we'll end it there, guys. Thanks very much for your time. For anyone tuning in on a replay, please do feel free to put any comments on whichever platform you're listening to this on, because we can always get back to you and respond to any of those comments, because I'll tag these guys in on those various platforms where they're streaming. And we'll be back next week at 11 a.m. with another topic and a different set of faces on the screen. So